Supreme Court and the Modi government at loggerheads, both over the appointment of judges and the appointment of members of India's Election Commission. I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo story. Our big focus today is on that constitutional bench hearing on way in the Supreme Court that is examining how election commissioners should be appointed. This is the Supreme Court, in fact, has now demanded that the government produce before it its files related to the appointment of Arun Goyal, a bureaucrat turned election commissioner. The Supreme Court wants to see these files at a time when there has been a kind of shadow boxing on between the government and the judiciary. Remember, this hearing around the Election Commission is taking place against the backdrop of an ongoing controversy. The Supreme Court today said not every election commissioner is independent like T.N. Seshan. But is the court actually really pushing back against the law minister's argument that the Collegium system, the system that is in fact used to appoint judges, is far too opaque? It's a statement that Kiren Rijiju has made not just once, but several times since, and the courts have been pushing back. In other words, the Supreme Court seems to be telling the government, if you can criticize us for how we appoint our own, well, we can criticize you as well for how you take certain decisions and make certain appointments. Meanwhile, lawyers from Gujarat to Telangana to Madras have been protesting. They're protesting against the Collegium's first decision under the Chief Justice, Justice Chandachud, on the transferring of certain judges that they say are men of really impeccable integrity. Today, we examine what seems to be a simmering tension between the government and the judiciary with our newsmaker on the program today, Justice Madan Lokur, somebody who's known for his outspokenness both on the bench and since he's retired from it. Good to see you, sir. Let me start by asking you whether you are joining the dots in the same way that I am. Do you see the Supreme Court now pushing back and establishing its turf in demanding to see how the government appointed Mr. Goyal as election commissioner? Is this really about marking territory?
Yeah, thank you, Barkha. Good to see you again. Yes, well, to answer your question, to an extent, yes. The Supreme Court is pushing back, because some of the appointments are pretty controversial, not only with regard to the Election Commission, but even otherwise. And there are some appointments which are not being made, right? So I think the people need to know, everybody needs to know, including the Supreme Court and the lawyers and everybody, why is it that some appointments are being made and some appointments are not being made? Now, in the case of the Election Commission, as far as I'm aware, the gentleman retired, just a couple of days ago, and soon after his retirement, he was appointed as an election commissioner. So when you talk about, post-retirement benefits and all that, does this come into the, into the radar of post-retirement benefits, or does it not come into that radar? So I think these are questions that need to be asked and they need to be answered as well.
One of the things that the court has actually endorsed, not by order but by observation, is Justice Joseph saying that the inclusion of the Chief Justice on the panel that decides who are members of the poll panel is something that he would agree with. Do you see this as basically the Supreme Court asserting itself in the light of the fact that the government seems to have now a view on how judges should be appointed?
Not really, in the sense that, yes, it would be good, of course, if the Chief Justice is a part of the panel. But, for the Lokpal, for example, you have a panel consisting of the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, and the Chief Justice of India. Okay, now, what is the role of, the panel? We've had instances where the Leader of the Opposition has not been invited, in a sense, or has dissented, and yet, the appointment has gone through. Whatever the Prime Minister wanted has gone through. Now, it should not happen that the Chief Justice of India is brought into the panel for the appointment of election commissioner, and again there's some kind of a controversy, and the person either gets appointed or there's a stalemate and nobody's appointed. So it's really too early to say, what is going to be the impact of bringing the Chief Justice of India into the panel.
Yeah, one can't ignore that this hearing on who should appoint members of the Election Commission is, of course, taking place against the backdrop of the Law Minister's comments. Now, you have been quite vocal in disagreeing with the Law Minister, but then look at what's happening with the Collegium, right? Its first set of decisions under the new Chief Justice, which involve the transfer of 3 judges, and then, let's just take you through those judges. You know them, but for the benefit of our audience, has seen the lawyers from Gujarat, Telangana, and the Madras bar up in arms. These lawyers are saying these transfers are like punishments for people, for judges they regard as being leaders in their space. And now the Chief Justice has tried to mediate this. But, if the Collegium wanted to make a strong case for itself, this uproar among the lawyers, these protests have not helped their case. How do you see this uproar?
Well, I'm frankly very surprised, that the first decision that the new Collegium has taken is with regard to the transfer of judges. There are appointments to the Supreme Court that are pending. Okay, Justice Datta, who is the Chief Justice of the Bombay High Court, his name has been recommended somewhere around 24th or 25th of September. So it's almost, 2 months and nothing has happened. Shouldn't that have been taken up as the priority? Shouldn't the government be asked, what are you doing with this, for the last almost 2 months? But suddenly, and surprisingly, transfer of judges, has priority. This is very, very strange. And why have they been transferred? It's nice to say administration of justice, but has something gone wrong in the administration of justice that you needed to transfer these persons?
So you're saying you don't agree with these transfers, and you don't agree that this should have been the first set of interventions that the Collegium made under the new Chief Justice?
Both. I don't agree with the transfer policy at all. Okay. I don't agree with that at all. And number 2, I don't think transfer of 3 judges is the priority of the Collegium. It should not be. The appointment of judges to the Supreme Court, the appointment of judges to the High Courts, that should be the priority. Not transferring one judge from one place to another.
What would you have wanted or preferred the Collegium to be doing instead? You're saying please correct me if I'm wrong, the centre has been sitting on certain decisions. So while the Collegium has the last word on the appointment of judges, the centre can simply delay this process by sitting on the file. You're saying the Collegium should have spoken up more vociferously in that regard. 2, that the Collegium should have been more concerned with appointing new judges rather than transferring existing ones.
Yes. I think the Collegium should ask the Law Minister, or the Chief Justice should ask the Law Minister in writing what is going on. I remember when we had some kind of a problem when I was in the Collegium, I had made a similar request to the Chief Justice of India at that time. And he said, well, I'll speak to him on telephone. Now, whether he spoke to him on telephone or not, I don't know. What happened, I don't know. So, this speaking on telephone or I will talk to him kind of business doesn't work. It has to be put down in writing. What is happening? Why are you not appointing Justice Datta, for example? There are so many other, recommendations that have been reiterated. Why are you not appointing those people? What's happening? How about giving us an answer?
Yeah. Why do you think Justice Chandrachud and his fellow members of the Collegium focused on these transfers then?
I have absolutely no idea. But
given yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry. I think it's wrong. I mean, that's not the first priority. Come on. I mean, there are more important things to attend to.
Given that, that this has already happened, and now the Chief Justice has his hands full dealing with these protesting lawyers, what would be his response or the court's response to the Law Minister, who has repeatedly questioned the Collegium system to an extent that many people believe that we will see a repeat of Parliament trying to bring in a new law, and the Supreme Court has to respond to that.
Yeah, well, I will not be surprised if Parliament brings in a new law. I will certainly not be surprised. But you can't, throw out the baby with the bathwater, as it were. The collegium does, the collegium system does require some tweaking. All right. I have said that before and I'm saying it again. But make those changes. You can't say, well, suggest what are the changes. The law minister is not suggesting any changes. He just says the collegium system is opaque. Okay, so it's opaque. How do you make it more transparent? How about suggesting that?
Why do you have a counter, or rather, what would be your counter to the law minister's comment that nowhere in the world does the government not appoint judges? You know that he called the collegium system opaque. He also said that judges spend more time on appointments and transfers than they do on delivering justice. And you said, well, the government is also opaque. But is that a counter?
Well, tell me one country in the world where the government sits on the file of appointment of judges. Is there any country like that? I mean, what is it? Just taking pot shots at the collegium, taking pot shots at the Supreme Court? Tell me one place in one country in the world, democracy. I'm not talking about autocracies or those kind of countries, where the law minister or the minister for justice takes pot shots at the Supreme Court. Tell me one. Come on, ask the law minister these questions. Why are these questions not being asked? He's the one who's asking questions, but he should be the one who's giving answers.
Yeah. Are you angry with the law minister?
Well, I'm upset generally, because I think the Supreme Court Collegium is not standing up. They should stand up and ask the law minister, what is it that you want? Okay? Just come up front and tell us what you want, and tell us why are you not making appointments. So unless the collegium stands up, this kind of pot shots will just go on and on and on. Where will it lead anybody?
From what I'm understanding, you are, of course, agitated that the law minister has sort of the freedom, as it were, to take pot shots at the court, and you're also disappointed with the collegium for not asserting itself enough.
Yes, I am.
What should they be doing? What should they be doing? What should they be doing?
The law minister, the collegium should write to the law minister and ask him, why are you not appointing Justice Dipankar Datta to the Supreme Court? Number one. Number two, there are so many recommendations that we have made which have been reiterated by us. Why are you not appointing those judges? Right? Why are you sitting on files for so long? Please give us an explanation. It's just a simple one-page letter asking these questions, and let's see what the answer is.
Let's take up, you mentioned Justice Dipankar Datta. Let me take up someone who was recommended to be a judge at the High Court level and says he was obstructed for his sexuality, Saurabh Kirpal. This is a case in which the collegium did actually make a recommendation and then wrote 4 letters. And the center has just, not acted on it. The collegium has the final word under the law. But the collegium doesn't seem to have asserted itself here either, but it has written a bunch of letters. So is writing letters the answer? What's the answer?
Well, I believe there's a public interest litigation pending in the Supreme Court regarding the appointment of judges.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court should tell the people, because now the proceedings are being live streamed, should tell the people that, listen, we have sent 4 letters. I don't know whether they sent 4 letters or not, but
I believe so. I believe so. I believe they have.
Yeah. They should tell everybody, while the case is being live streamed, that we have written on such and such date to the law minister and he has not replied. Okay, and we have sent a reminder on such and such date and he has not replied, so that the people know. Then we will know whether it is the Supreme Court Collegium which is opaque or whether it is the Department of Justice and the government of India, which is opaque.
Who do you think is being opaque right now?
I think the government of India is being more opaque than the Collegium. The Collegium has been functioning like this for many years. All right. But the government of India has begun functioning like this only in the recent past. So the government of India was never like this, or at least not as opaque as this. They may have been opaque earlier also, but certainly not as opaque as this. So there is this shift which is happening, and it has to be stopped right now because of the independence of the judiciary. That is what is important.
So let's join the dots now to what's happening in the Supreme Court vis-a-vis the election commission. Who should be India's election commissioners? How should they be chosen? If you were to join the dots between the Collegium debate and this debate, do you believe that this is the Supreme Court pushing back, or is this an individual judge, Justice Joseph, pushing back? Is this an institutional pushback, or is this an individual judge's pushback from everything you know in your experience?
Yeah, I don't think it's an individual because it's a constitution bench which is hearing the matter. 5 judges. It's not as if only Justice Joseph is hearing the matter. There are 5 judges hearing the matter, and not one of them has said that. Listen, let's not ask these questions. So I think at least 5 judges, if not the Supreme Court, is pushing back to an extent. Yeah, to an extent.
But you'd like to see them pushing back more and more directly.
Yeah.
You would have, yeah?
Yes, I would. Yes.
So if you were in the Collegium today, you were still serving, what would you have done after Mr. Rijiju's remarks?
Well, I would have asked the Chief Justice to write to him and ask him what he means by all this. He's saying it is opaque. All right, tell us which are the things which are opaque. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. List those opaque things. All right, and also tell us why you are not making the appointments. So yes, a letter must go. And by the way, and by the way, that letter must be disclosed to everybody.
So you're saying it shouldn't be private correspondence; it should be put out in the public domain.
Yeah. Why not? Why not? Because we are dealing with something which is very, very important, which is fundamental to democracy. What's the point of talking about 3 pillars of democracy? One of them goes.
So you're angry with the government and disappointed with the Chief Justice?
I'm not angry. I'm upset, right? And
with the government.
Yes, and I'm disappointed that the Collegium is not standing up.
Does the Chief Justice lead these decisions, or is the Collegium as a whole accountable for what they're doing or not doing?
Well, I don't know. I don't even know whether they've discussed this, right? If they've discussed it and come to a conclusion unanimously, it's a different matter altogether. But if the Chief Justice has overruled everybody, it's a different matter altogether. So really, it's in the realm of speculation. I don't know what's happened in the Collegium, so I can't say anything one way or the other.
Let me ask you this in the end. You've been very clear about what you think the Collegium should be doing, but what about the Collegium's own weaknesses? What's the one thing you like to see change in the Collegium? Right? Everyone accepts that it's not a perfect system. The fact is that there's been a certain opacity around it. We are now seeing Collegium decisions being uploaded onto websites, which is pretty unusual. We saw pretty public disagreement between Justice Chandrachud and Justice UU Lalit when Justice Lalit was still Chief Justice. What is the one thing you'd like to see change?
Well, there are several things. There are several things that I would like to see changed. In fact, before my retirement, I gave a list of, I think, about 17 or 18, changes that I was wanting to see, but they, never happened. There were 5 changes which I had suggested earlier, right? Those were implemented by the Chief Justice. Okay, whether those changes are continuing today or not, I don't know. But I think the Collegium should sit down, discuss it. Find out Why is there so much talk about the Collegium appointments? Why is the government taking pot shots? Why are lawyers talking about it? What is it that's going on? And they come to a decision and say, well, this is what we think. It's not that the system is perfect. No system is perfect. But the idea is to minimize the imperfections.
Tell me in the end, Justice Lokur, what is your biggest fear today? There seems to be an expectation that Parliament and the government will try and legislate. Previous time that happened, Parliament across the board supported, control, government having some control over how judges are appointed. The Supreme Court struck it down. What is your biggest fear today?
Well, my biggest fear today is that we may have a repeat of something similar to the NJAC, right? If we don't have that, then this kind of a stalemate will continue, where the Supreme Court makes recommendations and the government sits on it, and nothing happens. Okay, now that kind of a stalemate is terrible. It will completely subvert the independence of the judiciary, because then the government can pick and choose the persons whom they want to appoint. So if the Supreme Court recommends 10 people, the government will say, well, these guys, we want to appoint only 4 of them, and so far as the remaining 6 are concerned, we'll sit on the files. That is a very great danger if that happens.
Well, the stakes are high, and I'm very, very curious to see what the court does in relation to the Election Commission appointment case, because I do feel that there's a kind of marking of territory that is going on here, and will the government read those signs? Not, we have to see. At the moment, thank you, Justice Lokur, outspoken as ever. Never hesitate to speak your mind. I will be intrigued also to see if the Collegium does assert itself more forcefully, as you have urged, with the government, and how the government responds. Leaving it there. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.